Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and today I'm going to be covering my Blu-ray and DVD collection. And I figured I'd do this because I was going to make this video at the beginning of summer once I was back at home, but hiatus came up and I better late than never. And also, I'm going to be coming back to college. I'll be back in college at the time you'll be watching this video. And since I might not be taking all my DVDs and Blu-rays, I figured I'd do this now just in case. But let's get into it right now. At a quick count, I have about over 90 DVDs and over 30 Blu-rays, so that's over 100 titles. So it's really incredible how I got into this, because it's just over last year mostly that I started collecting. Some I got from my brother-in-law. There's a huge chunk from that, but I'm getting more into Blu-ray collecting now, so let's see how big that collection grows in the future. This is a 2020 edition. We're going to start off with Aladdin. This is a classic. I really enjoy this movie. Always such a fun one to revisit. It's not perfect, but Robin Williams as the genie is excellent. Then we have Batman Begins. I really love this franchise. Definitely gotta revisit them, especially as Christopher Nolan is coming out, or the Christopher Nolan's Tenet is coming out. I'll be getting more into that. But next we have Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This one was actually rather decent. It was from last year. It was the animation, and it was an interesting combination, but I think that's sort of what made it work a little. It had a little bit of problems with what they could have done with like the Joker coming in so late, but it was still quite a rather good one. Next up we have Bedtime Stories. This was, I don't remember my thoughts on it. I think it was pretty decent, but I haven't rewatched it recently, so I'll have to maybe get into that sometime. And then next up we have the Blade Runner collection. I just saw this at Walmart recently. Blade Runner 2049 and the original. I actually have not seen these two, so this will definitely be one I'm gonna check out soon. I definitely gotten into Denis Villeneuve's work, so that'll be interesting. Next up we have the Book Thief. I'm into writing and different books, so haven't watched this one actually. There's a lot of movies I haven't watched, but I'll be getting into that one hopefully fairly soon. I'll bring that to college and hopefully I can get into that. It has Emily Watson, not Emma Watson, but otherwise. Next up we have Brick, the first movie from Rian Johnson. This one was actually really good. Gotta rewatch this, and I'll be actually covering and reviewing Rian Johnson's filmography. Of course, I love Star Wars: The Last Jedi, so I just love his work in general, and Brick was actually a really good start, and I'll be doing a filmography review series coming fairly soon. Next up we have Brothers Bloom. This was a fairly recent edition. Not my favorite of Rian Johnson's film, pretty much my least favorite. Didn't have a whole lot to offer, but it was still pretty decent and pretty good. But of course I'll be covering that and rewatching that fairly soon. And then next up we have Cloverfield. This one was pretty trippy. It was my first found horror sort of franchise, or not franchise, but genre movies, and it was interesting. I haven't gotten into the other two. I heard the last one was terrible. This one was pretty good. I might have to rewatch it again to start to get a feel of what the found horror series is about, but that was pretty good still. Next up we have Coco, pretty much my favorite Pixar movie of all time, one of my favorite movies of all time. Such good heart found within that movie, can't go wrong with that, and the beautiful animation. Next up we have a twofer, because it's finishing up the Dark Knight trilogy. We have the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises. Still love both of these, gotta rewatch them, review them for you guys for Christopher Nolan's filmography. And next up we have The Wimpy Kid 1, 2, and 3, and they're on weird discs just because my sister actually had a mission trip in Indonesia, I believe, and she came back, brought these for me. I really enjoy these. Not so much the fourth, of course, but I honestly didn't think the fourth was the worst thing you could get from it, but it definitely didn't feel like any of these three. Project Rule's probably my favorite, but I might have to rewatch these, do a ranking, and let me know down in the comments below. And then next up, we have another twofer. We have Fantastic Beasts 1 and 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald in a second. I actually enjoyed the first one. Still have to, I'm currently rewatching some of the Harry Potter films, going to get back into this. I haven't actually watched Crimes of Grindelwald, and so I'll have to go through that series, get into Crimes of Grindelwald. I haven't heard great things about it, but since I liked the first Fantastic Beasts, maybe I'll have a little bit more positive review. We'll have to get into that and then just possibly do a ranking for you guys. And of course, you've seen some of these, still have the wrapping on them. It doesn't always mean I haven't watched them at all. It just means I haven't watched this particular copy. I have this one. I have Fast 5, my second favorite of the Fast and Furious movies, I believe. It was pretty much right up there with Fast and Furious 6. I really enjoy both of these. Really, such a bonkers turn for the Fast and Furious franchise when they added Dwayne Johnson in there. But it's still a good bit of fun. Next up, we have Finding Nemo, a really good one, higher up, not necessarily in the top 5 of my Pixar movies list. It's a pretty sweet, sentimental movie for its time and for its message it's trying to do. That's the first little cube. And then next up we have Flipper. Haven't watched this in quite a long time, since my childhood. I believe I remember it still being a pretty good movie. Gonna rewatch this. Haven't watched a whole lot of animal movies or dolphin movies recently, besides like Dog's Purpose or other dog movies. Next up we actually have both of the Ghostbuster movies, and there was one time it says 2 for $3, but I found these at a thrift store sealed for 50 cents each, actually, because it was marked down from that price. So that was a no-brainer. Had to get these. Just watch Ghostbusters, the first one, in the theaters for the very first time, actually. I really enjoyed this one. Definitely gonna get into the second one. I've watched the 2016 one. Wasn't a huge fan of that, but I'll have to rewatch that. I don't think it was absolute garbage or horrible, but we'll just have to see that, and maybe I'll do a ranking on that one as well, because there's a lot of franchises to go through on this movie channel. Next up we have God's Not Dead. Just the first one. My mom actually has the last two. This one I actually really enjoyed. It's like, whether you're a Christian or not, even in the Christian community, I've heard there's people that actually trash this film, and I actually don't necessarily get that quite as much. I might have to make an opinion video on this and this series. I wasn't a huge fan of the second one. That one felt a little bit too more forced, but this one and the third one, I thought it was actually rather good, and not perfect with some of the storytelling and dialogue, but it's still rather good, like, just for what it's trying to be and its influence it made on actually a lot of people I know personally, or just within some comments. Otherwise, in the critics section or reviewers on Letterboxd, there's not so much positive score. Next up we have The Greatest Showman. This is one that didn't receive high ratings on Letterboxd or Rotten Tomatoes, but I really enjoy this one. It's a great musical, fantastic soundtrack, one of my favorites of all time. Yes, it is very off base with the history, and because I actually had to do a project on comparing the history versus the movie, and it's very off base the history, so it did end up sort of taking some out of how good this film was, but I still absolutely love the magic captured from this, and it exposed me more to Hugh Jackman and realizing he can really sing from this one. Next up we have Gremlins, one of my personal favorite classics from the 80s. Had to get this, and it's just a really fun one, just kind of loony, but it just has some heart. to its effects and what it actually has to do and offer. Sort of a little bit of a horror movie, but not so much of a scary movie. But next up we have Hancock. This was one I got from my brother-in-law. Haven't watched this. It doesn't have the case, but that's okay. I can still watch this at some point once I get around to that. And then next up we have 3 of this specific franchise. We have Harry Potter 2, 3, and 4. Actually gonna eventually try and find the Blu-rays for the whole series. This one has a cover falling apart, but no particular reason why I have these 3 because I got them from my brother-in-law. But I really enjoy the Harry Potter franchise. Maybe you don't. I really do. And still have to rewatch. The last one I watched is the 3rd one, Prisoner of Azkaban. Probably my favorite, but gonna have to get into finishing that one. Next up we have Hobbit 2 and 3, Desolation of Smaug, and Battle of the 5 Armies. I have the first one on Blu-ray, so I can, and I have all of these, and as well as the Lord of the Rings one. You'll see in the future of this vid that I still have to explore and rank them because I used to rewatch them a lot when they came out, and then I just haven't watched them recently, so I'll have to rewatch them in order to give my fresher thoughts. But I actually enjoy both franchises quite a bit. And then moving along, here we have I Can Only Imagine, probably my favorite from Christian cinema of all time. One of my favorite movies, actually. And it's just so disheartening. It just has... Dennis Quaid probably has his best performance in here. It's so emotional. And I just love the soundtrack from this one specifically. So that's just a really good one to have. And next up we have, speaking of Christopher Nolan again, we have Inception. Another super good one. I can't wait to rewatch this and analyze it again because I actually only watched this for the first time this year. Really excited to re-explore this film and give my thoughts on it for you guys. And all the films are falling off the table, so kind of just keep on moving. And I'm messing up my alphabetical order, but I'll just have to fix it after this film as I pack up stuff for college. Next up we have Jurassic World and Jurassic World 2. Really enjoy just the Jurassic Park franchise in general. It kind of gets worse as it goes along, but even the 3rd one I didn't think was absolutely horrible, but it wasn't necessarily as great. This one, really good still. And then Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I was not a fan of. Maybe my least favorite of the franchise, but I have to rewatch these 2 in order to get some of my thoughts on it and maybe rank them on the channel. Of course, there's all these franchises I'm mentioning that I own, and even some I don't own. So let me know down in the comments below if there's any specific movie reviews or franchises you would like to rank, and just leave that all down in the comments below. Let me know what sort of videos you like to see on this channel. And finishing off this cube over here, we have La La Land. This is an incredible piece. I watched it for the first time. Really fun musical, not the greatest musical, but really high up there for sure, and just a really good piece, and it definitely deserved all of these special awards from the Academy. And then next up we have The Last Adam. This one I actually saw at the Creation Museum. It's a short film. I still haven't rewatched it actually. It's been a couple years since I actually got it, but it was actually really good. It's just sort of a quick thing that sort of represents a representation of the Passion of Christ movie, and it was pretty solid for a short film. That was fun. And then next up we have the Lego Movie 2. This is another franchise I'm looking to rank and get my thoughts out on this channel, because actually the last time I just rewatched these, I don't know if it's just because they're rewatching or whatever, the Lego Movie 2 is still really, really good, but it's not top cinema for me. This one was actually really extraordinary, so I'm wondering if I still would pick this over this one, or maybe that's just the entertainment value that I would choose this over the first, because the first one has a really good message, really well crafted, but the second one with the time travel and everything is just really good. And now we're going on to the second sort of half, and then we have another half of the shelf down there of DVDs, and then we'll get on to about 1.5 shelves of Blu-rays. So continuing on the letters, we have The Avengers of Clutch Powers. This is a goofy sort of Lego movie that was a direct-to-video, I believe. But it's just sort of a classic for, not necessarily a classic of age, but a classic of just the animation style is sort of goofy, but it actually has a rather good sort of story and just interesting sort of entertainment that I still have to revisit, but I do remember I watched it a couple times, and it's rather good for if you enjoy a sort of goofy kids movie and accepting it for what it is. Next up we have Justice League versus Bizarre League, Lego Superheroes, one of those direct-to-video or DVD movies from Lego. I haven't watched a whole lot of the future ones that they've recently been making, which I do want to explore, sort of. But this one, some decent good fun. It's not top tier of anything or whatever, but it's still some good fun, especially if there were kids involved that I had to show it to. Next up, we have Lego Ninjago movie. A lot of people dislike this film, actually. I was thinking of the Lego Batman movie, which I don't have, and I'll probably be getting that just to complete this franchise, but not a huge fan of the Lego Batman movie. Not a huge fan of this one either, but it's alright. I actually remember enjoying it a bit more in theaters, but when I rewatched it, it did sort of decrease for me, although it's still not perfect or great. It loses some of its Lego animation when it adds some of the realer effects to it, and so not the best film, and I'm dropping DVDs all over. Next up we have Lego Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, a short film, Lego Star Wars film, and it's pretty decent. I remember watching it a while ago. Again, it's sort of like the Batman and superhero ones. Pretty good, but not perfect. They're just something to throw on if you want. Lions and the Lambs coming next. Seals have not watched this. Found this at my college. They're sort of people giving away movies or just miscellaneous stuff. Actually, still haven't gotten around to this, but hopefully will one day. It looks like a little bit of a war movie. Haven't actually heard too much about it, but it does have Tom Cruise, so that'll be an interesting one to check out. Next up, we have The Little Mermaid. Not a fan of this. This is another one I got from my brother-in-law. It's good to have, but it's not one I would rewatch a whole lot because, I don't know, the movie just doesn't click with me. With all the villain, the story direction, it's still a good technical story, but not one that I would put on a whole lot. But much different than that sort of opinion, we have Looper, which is one I really, really enjoy. Another Rian Johnson's filmography, one I'm gonna be reviewing for you guys. This one was really good. I watched it only once, actually, when I was watching through his filmography for the first time, and the time travel sort of different mind-bending sort of thing. Really, really good. Bruce Willis, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Emily Blunt, all really good actors, and just combined together to make a fantastic story in Looper. And Rian Johnson, of course, really has a great mind for making films such as that. Next up, we have a bit of a trilogy, like I mentioned before. All three of the Lord of the Rings movies, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and Return of the King. Like I mentioned, gonna need to rewatch these. Haven't rewatched them too recently enough to give a fresh opinion, but of course, I do remember loving these. I rewatched them quite a few times, I believe, back when they, not when they released, but leading up to when the Hobbit movie was coming out. I've watched them for the first time and rewatched them a couple times, and I like the Hobbit trilogy as well, so we'll have to get into my thoughts on that later. Next, we have more of the MCU. I count the M for the MCU as where I place these movies, just so I can keep the franchise together when I get more movies. We have Iron Man 2, one of my least favorites, but it was pretty cheap at where I got it at a thrift shop or whatever, and not a horrible movie, but definitely not the greatest. Next up, we have Avengers. I actually have this on an upgraded edition, or not edition, but upgraded Blu-ray case. Later on I'll be showing that, but still have the DVD, and I don't know if I'll ever, maybe I'll be giving the duplicates to my friends or something, but that's that. And next up we have Iron Man 3. It's in this sort of weird case I up for my brother-in-law, so maybe it was a rental or something that he got, but still have the movie, and I actually quite enjoy this a lot more than others. It does have a little bit of technical flaws in some sort of aspects of the story, but I don't mind the Mandarin twist because it's actually a little bit of a clever, even if it's not quite as exciting. And the final battle for this one is just a blast, and I can really respect it for what it is. It's really fun. Avengers: Age of Ultron, I remember really enjoying this one in theaters, so I ended up getting it. I don't remember enjoying it when I rewatched it since last year for my MCU ranking. Hopefully I can get my love for it back. I don't think I ever loved it more than the first Avengers, but we'll just see when we get into that as I'm going into my MCU review series. Next up we have Avengers: Infinity War, one of my favorite MCU movie so far, at least. We'll see if my opinions change on any of the movies as I go along this review series and rewatch series. So that's just a fun collaboration of all the heroes, and just a major masterpiece that led to Endgame as well. And next up we have Captain Marvel. I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than others. This gets a lot of flack and a lot of hate. I just really still enjoy it. It's a good bit of fun. I still think it has a good story, and the twist really worked for me. I respect Brie Larson in her role of what she sort of does. It's not the most expressive of acting, I will admit, but it's still a good bit of fun for when I watched it and rewatched it even. So I don't know if my opinion will change on it, but that's just my opinion. Next up we have Avengers: Endgame. Loved this in theaters, and it's kind of decreased a little bit. I had more and more thoughts on the analysis of this film, and it's definitely a film I'll be making a bit of analysis videos just to test out those sort of different videos, especially as I get into the review. It'll be interesting getting into the review, rewatching this, seeing if my thoughts on it now are sort of lining up. And I'm definitely not just going to trash it just for what it sort of does, but it does have some flaws that I think that are actually there that many people may be missing as they're watching, or at least don't count it quite as much in affecting their score. But next up we have Men in Black 3, the only one I have from this franchise, and my favorite of this franchise. I believe the second one I believe Men in Black International was my least favorite, but Men in Black 2 was short after, and then the Men in Black 1, and then this one was pretty good. This one was a personal favorite. Really enjoyed this one. Love the time travel aspects as well. Like I always mention, I love time travel movies. Next up we have Missing Link. This was released last year, and it had a decent, good bit of fun from this one. It's not perfect. It has an odd animation style choice, but I believe it was from the Leica film company or something, but it's still a good bit of fun. It has some parts that aren't so cliche to what you're expecting for Bigfoot and all of these other sort of these sort of legends or whatever you would say. Next up we have not necessarily a movie, but like Hamilton. This is from Sights and Sounds Theaters. I actually saw the play of this. This is not a Broadway show, but it's from Sights and Sounds Theaters. I saw this and I really enjoyed it there. I actually don't remember if I watched this all the way through on this movie edition, but it was so I don't know if the theater movie edition will be quite as enjoyable to rewatch, because it's more about the experience of being there that makes it so much better. But that was still a good experience, at least being there. Next up we have Nonstop, and this is Liam Neeson, one of my favorite actors. Has a good bit of imperfect films that I still really enjoy. There's a clever little mystery tale hidden within this. I haven't written down my thoughts on this on Letterboxd or anything, so I'll have to rewatch that soon and see how it lives up, but I thought it was a good bit of fun and still had me guessing who sort of was the guy with the bomb in that sort of chase. And it's similar to The Commuter, which translates it to being on a train instead of a plane, but still really good. Next up we have Pet Sematary. I actually did watch this despite this still being in the package, but it was 99 cents at a thrift shop. Wasn't too bad. I believe I did like this the most. I'm actually not remembering. It's been quite a few months since I rewatched the first, second, and this remake for the first time, but this might have been over that. If not, Pet Sematary 2 was my favorite. I don't know, might have to get that more into October, reviewing and ranking some horror or thriller sort of movies. Let me know about that down in the comments below. But it's not a great movie, but it was still pretty good, and I could see the effects had changed, and I guess that's mostly what its purpose was. Next up we have Sandlot. Only watched this once a few years back, but really did enjoy it. Gotta revisit that and revisit quite a few other sports films, and maybe I'll see what I get from that. Next up we have Scooby-Doo 1 and 2, and I also got these from my brother-in-law, and I believe I enjoyed this, watched quite a few years ago. Don't remember if I watched the second, but this is actually an interesting piece to my film collection, and it's because it has mini discs, as if like Blu-ray covers are smaller than DVD covers, but these discs are smaller even though they play on normal DVDs. So I don't know how many of these were made for how many movies, but like it has mini DVDs for whatever reason, even though they play on normal players. Maybe it was meant to fit in smaller disc holders if that's the only thing they had at certain sort of systems or whatever. But either way, that's an interesting thing. I gotta rewatch those at some point. Maybe I'll rank those once I get into rewatching Scoob, which I didn't end up getting to watch. Next up we have The Soloist. Haven't watched this one. Heard some decent good things about it. It was made sometime after Iron Man, I believe, so has Robert Downey Jr. and Jamie Foxx. Sounds like a good cast. Sounds like a good story. Gotta get into that at some point. Spaceballs haven't watched at all, and I love Star Wars. I haven't watched much of Star Trek movies, so gotta get more into all of those, because right now my bias is with Star Wars, but gotta get into, just relax a little bit and get into some of the other sort of Star Wars-esque science fiction movies, and this one was purposely being a rip-off of that, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And speaking of which, we're getting into Star Wars, the first 6 movies. Of course, I really enjoy all of these. I have a ranking on my channel. I have unpopular opinions. Least favorite is Empire Strikes Back. Yep, I said it. But yeah, I really do enjoy Star Wars as a whole, and it's just a really fun franchise. Love exploring it, and it's some big reason that I got into more of the movie not collecting, but movie watching, getting into this movie channel. It's kind of due to the Star Wars franchise. And next up we have Rogue One. Rather good one. I actually do enjoy this spin-off from the normal sort of trilogies. It wasn't necessary, but it still is a good bit of fun. Had some good Easter eggs, and just nice to explore something outside of the normal sort of direction they're taking with Star Wars. And I do wish they would do more of those. Unfortunately, with the backlash on Solo, it doesn't seem like that will happen too very soon, besides on Disney Plus series or whatever. Next up we have Star Wars The Force Awakens. Really enjoy this one, of course. Just a good bit of fun, and actually one of my favorites still. Really love what Disney has done with this series. Not a great conclusion, but do find some good bit of fun. And of course I enjoy all of the Star Wars movies just a little bit at least. But of course we go into Star Wars The Last Jedi. And no comment, but it's my favorite movie of all time, so gotta have this one, even if it's not so much a huge unpopular opinion, but it is an unpopular opinion nonetheless, with it being my favorite, though I still see some people that do agree with me on that sort of statement. But next up we have The Clone Wars, not the series, but the movie. Not too good, but like the other just normal live action movies, I find it to be actually rather decent. So, wasn't necessary since they had a whole series based on it, but I guess it was just a different sort of adaptation, putting a bunch of episodes together to make it a movie. And then next up we have The Story of Star Wars. I believe I got this for really cheap somewhere. I tried rewatching this at some point last year before The Rise of Skywalker. Wasn't a huge fan of it because it was sort of the retelling of all 6 movies, or they had a half hour of retelling the first trilogy, and then they had a half hour of retelling episodes 1 and 2, and not episode 3, because episode 3 wasn't out at the time. They couldn't wait to make this, I guess. But even so, like the droids are retelling it, and I didn't get far into it before I got too bored, because if I'm going to watch the Star Wars movies, I'm going to watch all of the Star Wars movies. I don't need it shortened necessarily, or even if I did, I would watch like a 2-minute version on YouTube or whatever. But next up we have Superman 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have only seen the first. I think I started to watch the second one at some point, but haven't gotten back into it. Haven't gotten into the other ones. Definitely a sort of franchise that I want to get into now that I'm getting more into exploring all this sort of superhero movies that are out. And for being more classics, maybe just the first 2 are classic. I haven't heard too much about the third, 4. And actually there's a 5th one, is Superman Returns, which I don't have, but definitely still a franchise I need to check out. Maybe I'll even do a ranking on the older Superman, or just Superman movies in general, because Man of Steel was a really good one as well. Next up we got more Liam Neeson with the Taken Collection 1, 2, and 3. Really enjoyed this one. It's a good big bit of fun. Fast food, junk food sort of movies, as Sean Chandler likes to call it. But the first one is just really, really good. The third one I actually still really enjoy. And the second one might be my least favorite, but it still has a good bit of fun action that Liam Neeson is just really well known for. And finishing off this little cube over here, we have Teen Titans Go to the movies, Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. I actually found this concept quite interesting. Just didn't get around to it. It came out last year. It's an animated movie. Hopefully actually gonna check this out soon and not just keep putting it off, but not necessarily a need to watch it soon, but it still seems quite an interesting subject. It may not be great, but it's like the Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's fun to watch obscure movies, obscure sort of team-ups where different universes collide. And speaking of which, next up we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first one, I haven't watched this in a few years, but I do still recall, really enjoy it. It's a classic. I don't remember if I've seen the rest of this trilogy. I believe there is only, of this 90s trilogy, I believe there is a second and third. I don't remember if there is more than that. You can let me know that in the comments below, but do enjoy this, but need to rewatch it to recall my thoughts more clearly. We're breaking, we're about 2/3 into the video. We have another half a cube of the DVDs, and then we gotta go on to 1.5 cubes of the Blu-rays, and that will be my collection. But if you're still watching here, put down in comments hashtag Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. Tomatoes, just Rotten Tomatoes. That's the first thing that came to my mind. And let me know how you're enjoying this video, and I really do appreciate it if you're watching all the way through to this point. Now we're going down to the movies off screen because I know there's only the top shelf shown on your screen. Next up we have 007 Tomorrow Never Dies, the James Bond. I've actually only seen the first two movies, and due to all this pandemic and everything, I've sort of been putting off rewatching the rest of them because James Bond, I don't even remember the title of the new one coming out because it's been a while and it keeps getting delayed to November maybe. I don't remember if it got delayed past that, but this is a random one I found for free at college as well among a few of these other DVDs, but just so happens to have it and only have watched the first two James Bond movie. I don't even remember which number this one is from, but watched the first two only from Sean Connery as the actor. So I hope maybe I'll be getting back into that watch series soon if I discover that James Bond 25 is still going to be coming out fairly soon due to everything going on. Hopefully it wasn't delayed again. But so next up we have Steven Spielberg film, I believe, War of the Worlds. I've actually been going through some of the Steven Spielberg films recently in preparation for West Side Story. I believe he is making this December if it still comes out. Haven't rewatched this one since I started my YouTube channel. I found that it was pretty good for what it's trying to be, but sort of with how I'm taking my own novel with this other alien species, I do wish they added more character to the aliens, and I know maybe it's a little bit of a nitpick bias based on my own sort of story that I'm exploring, but it also does leave some character absent from the aliens, though in some ways it's still really good. Just gotta rewatch this one, see my thoughts on it again, see if that still resonates the same opinion with me, because I do wish they added some character to the aliens that are within that one, but I think it's still kind of creepy, really still well made, I think, maybe. And then next up we have World War Z, one that has been sounding interesting to me with the zombies and Brad Pitt, and haven't watched it though yet, but I have it, so maybe one of these days fairly soon I'll be getting into that. And then the next few films I'll be getting or showing off is the X-Men films. We have X-Men, X-Men 2, and X-Men The Last Stand. And the X-Men first one is such a defining piece for the comic book culture, for to say, leading to the MCU, especially influences the Spider-Man and the X-Men movies, influence sort of superhero movies that are out today. So really do enjoy it. It's not perfect. X2 isn't perfect either. And X10, I'm just not a fan of at all. But as always, I do love Hugh Jackman in that and his strong influence for working out and everything. X-Men Origins Wolverine, actually gonna be making a video on this fairly soon, solely on this movie, because I have an unpopular opinion. I really do enjoy it. I've actually recently seen people that made a post where it's a review that they actually do enjoy it too, but it's still an unpopular opinion and probably a higher rated unpopular opinion, of a very hot take in my mind, and probably to many others. You don't often see it near the top on many people's lists. But next up we have X-Men First Class, and this is not the last of the X-Men movies I have, but X-Men First Class was one of my favorites. I believe actually my second favorite maybe of the X-Men movies. Really do enjoy that. And New Mutants is coming out, so maybe I'll be rewatching a couple of them just to refresh my memories. But you can probably expect a ranking of the X-Men movies once that does come out. And of course, next up we have the Wolverine going to Japan, and Hugh Jackman at his most shredded. Of course, there's still Logan, but this one is still a good bit of fun. Love the culture sort of aspect of this film. Shows really how tough the Wolverine is. The end battle is sort of cheesy. It's a little weird with all the CGI robot and Viper. They're not super appealing villains, at least in my mind, to the franchise, but other than that, it's rather good most of the way through. Next up, we have Zodiac. I actually watched this for the first time a couple months ago. Rather good for David Fincher, based on a true article or something, not necessarily the whole story based on, but it is a rather good one. Great cast with Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr. A pretty good movie, not perfect, but had a good bit of fun with, and it is a good technical side of the movie. And that is the rest of my Blu-rays, DVDs in my collection. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. It's a bit crazy, but worth sticking through it with all my mumble jumbles and rambling on. Next up we have 42. I actually gave this to my dad recently. 42, the Jackie Robinson story. Need to get into rewatching this, especially with Chadwick Boseman. Watched this a couple years back, and before I recognized Chadwick Boseman as an actor, since he made Black Panther especially, but Harrison Ford I love still, especially with all of his acting career. But just a defining piece talking about Jackie Robinson, how he becomes the first black baseball player, and that's just a really good film that I would definitely recommend you watch if you haven't already, and like based on true story movies, a really fun one at that. Next up we have The Amazing Spider-Man. Don't have the second one, but this one is a good bit of fun. It's underrated if you end up hating it. It's not perfect. I still prefer Tom Holland and Peter Maguire over Andrew Garfield, but I still do enjoy this one specifically, especially, and I do enjoy Andrew Garfield. Just some of the story surrounding him and the rest of the cast. In the second one, it has a little bit too much that it's trying to cover, and therefore it doesn't perform quite as well, though Andrew Garfield still a really good cast member for this series. And unfortunately we never got Amazing Spider-Man 3 with the Sinister Six. And then next up we have Alice in Wonderland on Blu-ray and DVD. This one, I honestly can't remember how much I liked it. I remember watching it as a kid, but I definitely gotta rewatch this. I watched the live action ones recently, more recently than this one, but gotta rewatch them, and especially compare to the live action ones and maybe rewatch the live action ones to get a better idea on what it actually did to affect those, if anything, and whatnot. And this one was actually, this takes away a little bit of a August haul that I would have made anyways, because this one was one I picked up just last week or something, Baby Driver. And if I don't know when this video is coming up, but I love this one. I will have a video if it hasn't already come out already. This is a really, really good movie that one of my friends recommended me, and I just absolutely love it. From Edgar Wright. I've watched only his film of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Wasn't the biggest fan of that, though it's still really good. But this one, I definitely think it's a masterpiece. One of my favorite films of all time. I'll definitely be trying to go through all of my favorite films at some point and then make some sort of ranking of top 20, top 10, top something favorite films of all time now that I'm actually getting into that sort of thing. Next up, we get Bad Boys for Life. Wasn't a huge fan of the first two. This one was a bit better. I missed it in theaters, so I ended up getting it on Blu-ray. And it was a good bit of fun. It had a bit more solid story moments and solid action that actually worked better for me. And so I could definitely enjoy it. It's not like my top surprise, but it was still a good surprise based on how it compares to the first two Bad Boy movies. And this one keeps wanting to fall off, and I just dropped another one. But next up we have Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Don't have the rest of this trilogy, and I'm really excited for Godzilla vs. Kong, or whatever they call it, but I really do enjoy and love this. Combine the two words there, but really enjoy this one much more than everyone else. Love the close-in shots and then pulling back and seeing the different introspective looks from the monsters to the humans and sort of the whole city and the effects it puts on them. So it definitely really do love this movie. I believe it was actually it was my favorite movie from last year. Yes, over Joker 1917 and some of the better ones from last year. Really do enjoy that, and of course I had to get it on Blu-ray. Next up we have The Grey, some more Liam Neeson. This one I actually have not seen before. Heard it's a bit of a survival hunting sort of movie. Really excited to get into this sort of one. Heard it's not necessarily perfect, but still really good nonetheless, and it sounds interesting, has a great cover. Next up we have Hobbit and His Unexpected Journey, the first of the series. Really do enjoy this one, of course, as I do the rest of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings franchise. And then next up we'll pull up a couple. We have John Wick, still sealed in the package, but really do enjoy this movie, and also the rest of the trilogy. Wasn't as big a fan about the third one quite as much. I feel like it had some potential that it left out with what they're doing with the story. But John Wick, really good, and love the action in this. Really love his character. Next up we have Knives Out, the most recent addition to Rian Johnson's collection. We'll see if I re-review this. Maybe I'll do a rewatch when I'm reviewing the Rian Johnson filmography, because not sure if I'm gonna re-review this in The Last Jedi since I have a review on my channel, but maybe since I'm exploring the first three and giving you my thoughts, maybe I'll end up doing that eventually anyways. So we'll get into that. And next up we have The Lion King on Steelbook. Don't have too many Steelbooks, and actually still have this sealed, but I did quite enjoy this a lot more than others. I think it's almost as good as the original. It still doesn't capture the emotions and everything, but I still love that aspect of it because it's sort of impressive to show off all this CG animated live action-esque. It's more animated than live action, but to show all of that off as if it was in real life. And I do love that part about it. Still have to give it a rewatch. Maybe my opinions will change, but just still loved it from the moment I saw it in theaters, and one of my favorite movies of last year. Next up we have Logan, one of my favorite movies, 2017, my favorite X-Men movie. Definitely a great ending to the incredible story arc with Wolverine, and the rest of the characters love X-23 in this, and just the whole story and the villain and everything, the legacy of Hugh Jackman that comes out of this is fantastic. Do enjoy this quite a bit. One of my favorite movies, possibly. Gonna have to rewatch that especially, but my rewatch over that was the reason I also got it. Definitely want to see the noir version of it. Next up we have Avengers on Steelbook. One of the older ones. I believe this was my first Blu-ray actually, where I actually found it at a thrift store, and it has this older art. I'm not a huge fan of the silhouetted versions of the covers, but we got that on Blu-ray and DVD actually in there. So I really do enjoy this art on this Steelbook quite a bit more than the newer ones, but really excited to have that to add to the Blu-ray collection as I begin to upgrade my MCU movies. And next up we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Really do enjoy this. Really love Tom Holland's performance and everything about his role, and just not top tier MCU films, but I still really do like these movies, and I'm saying the same thing over and over because I'm going through all of these movies and talking movies too much. But next up we have a recent pickup from this summer, Black Panther, and another one that it's not the most recent one. I got this off of eBay, and I do like this quite a bit more than the version that's out right now. It's all of the silver metallic. I don't even know if you can see it, but there's a shine to it with this silver, and just such a dope looking cover and art, and it's just like spotty sort of. And yes, it is the MCU version, which it almost doesn't match what you're getting, but I actually love it for that, and great inside look to that as well. Just had the Blu-ray, but that's all I'm going for when I'm collecting these new movies. And the shield fell over, everything's falling over. Next up we have Spider-Man Far From Home, one of my favorite MCU movies. Absolutely had a good time with this. Loved the story, loved the arc that Spider-Man has to go through, and it's similar to Homecoming. Maybe that's why I like it so much, except the antics. I know I'm making up words now as I go along, I'm going crazy, but just the energy that comes out of this film is just absolutely fantastic. Absolutely love everything about this film. Mysterio, you kind of expect it coming with what he's doing, but connecting it to the other films of the MCU all the way back to Iron Man, and just some other movies from where the villains have come from, makes it just for a good bit of fun. And honestly, it's actually emotional for me, so still love this. Not gonna hate on those that love it because it does go a little bit away from it does go a lot away from the normal comics friendly neighborhood Spider-Man sort of adaptation that you would expect. But I love that they go for their own unique way and own unique twist on the character, and I think it works in the MCU universe that they have created. And the next ones that I need to have fallen, but I actually have the Mission Impossible franchise, all except, let me see, we have the first one, we have MI2, we have Mission Impossible 3. Wasn't a massive fan of that one, and I actually did enjoy the Mission Impossible 2. Gotta rewatch that, see if it still lives up. We'll rewatch all of these, see if they live up to my opinions on them before. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Actually don't have Rogue Nation, the 5th one, but did end up going for Mission Impossible Fallout. Possibly my favorite franchise. We gotta see when I rewatch them, but maybe I'll make a ranking of these on my channel. And I have one movie missing that I'll have to get. That movie is Avengers Endgame on 4K, and I actually picked this up just a couple days ago, or at least at the time I'm filming this video, so for you a couple weeks ago. And it's 4K Blu-ray digital, and it's sort of the Target edition where it has a special flip book. I still have it sealed because I still need to just rewatch it, and mostly the reason I have some sealed is I'm not opening them until I actually go forward and rewatch them. But like I mentioned before, I do have a little bit of problems that I thought through with this when analyzing it, but still definitely a really good film. Really interested in my own opinion on how it's gonna come up when rewatching it. Gonna see if my analyzation still lives up to actually watching the film as is with all of these thoughts in mind, and that's gonna be a good bit of fun. Great addition, especially to the Blu-ray collection. Was going to get a Blu-ray anyways, and I found this at Target recently on clearance for $10.48, and I definitely could not pass on this. And it's even my first 4K, besides, unless you counted the Lion King 4K on the steelbook as well, but this is the 4K back, and Blu-rays are falling all over the place. This video is going crazy, I'm losing my voice, but it's all for you guys. It's all for good fun, talking movies too much. So if you're still here watching, do hashtag crazy or whatever down in comments below. It's just a good bit of fun. I really do appreciate you staying around if you're listening or actually watching the video still. But next up we have Nightcrawler. Have not watched it, still sealed in a package on Blu-ray and DVD. Heard some really good things about this one. Some just good reviews, not perfect, but still expecting some great things out of that. Gonna be a really, really good fun time of getting into that. Next up we have The Prestige. Picked it up this past summer. Haven't watched it from the Blu-ray edition, but did watch it recently, and I really do enjoy that one. One of the top of Christopher Nolan's, but still gonna have to really get into rewatching them and then reviewing them for you guys on this channel, and that'll be fun through the filmography review series I'm doing for him, Rian Johnson, and possibly Quentin Tarantino. If there's any other directors, let me know down in comments below you'd like to see after those, possibly. Next up we have RoboCop, the newest one, I believe. Have not seen this or any of the older ones, so may get into those at some point. Sounds like a good bit of fun. It may not be the best, but still, I don't expect it to be absolutely horrible. Next up, we have Sleeping Beauty. Actually, don't remember if I've ever watched this, so that'll be interesting, but gotta watch some of the classics at some point, especially with these Disney animations. Next up, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Again, don't know if I watched this, but maybe I have, but I just don't remember in my opinion because it's been way too long. And then next up, we don't have all of the Star Wars movies on 4K or Blu-ray, at least just yet. But of course, I had to go with Star Wars The Last Jedi on Steelbook. You know I had to with my favorite movie of all time. Might even be getting more versions of the covers and everything. Do I need it? No, but it's a good bit of fun for collecting the beautiful art of this film. Really do love this cover, and I'm sure most of you might even agree, even if you dislike the movie. And it has the special commentary and inside as well. I can't wait to get into actually getting into that as well, because gotta see the director's vision for the film, and already I agree with it, so I wouldn't mind seeing and hearing it from him myself and seeing all of the behind the scenes. Next up, we have Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker on Blu-ray. Decided to skip just getting this on DVD, and don't have Solo, a Star Wars story, on any sort of version, which I do enjoy, but had to just get it, had to get Rise of Skywalker just so I have it, because I love Star Wars. Wasn't the biggest fan of this as a conclusion to the trilogy, especially of the first two movies that I love. So this was kind of a letdown. Still a decent movie, kind of, at best, but do like the cover art though. Can't say that. I love the effects of the movie. Just some of the movie felt too cliche maybe on some of just the tropes, and some parts were convenient on how the story just moved forward. And I actually only have a few movies left to show you, a few Blu-rays. Next up, we have Venom. Need to rewatch this. Saw this only once. Didn't get to see it in theaters, but saw it once I rented it or whatever way back, and did enjoy it. And definitely gonna have to give it a rewatch maybe when Spider-Man 3 comes out. I'll be re-ranking the Spider-Man movies, and you'll finally, maybe I'll include this in the ranking, or maybe I'll even do a separate review on this just because it's not necessarily a Spider-Man film. It's up to debate whether it counts as a Spider-Man film, but I do remember enjoying this. Just gotta see if my opinion still is the same once I get around to re-watching that film. Next up, we have The Way Back, one I missed in theaters, and one I just so happen to still have not watched, even though I got it in order to watch, because I've been watching a lot of films, and this just so happens not to have been one of them, even though I just not recently, like maybe a month ago, picked up. Have not got around to it because I'm getting into too many movies, you know. I'm sure some of you know how it is, because you just collect so many movies and then you watch so many movies that are on streaming and elsewhere. But next up, we have X-Men, a really pretty good film. Yes, I had to upgrade it. I almost blanked from my mind that I just showed off the first 6 I have on Blu-ray. Have only the first one on Blu-ray that I picked up recently due to the 20th anniversary of this movie. Such a good piece of cinema for the start and influence of the superhero genre. Not the greatest, like I mentioned, but still really good. Had to pick that up on Blu-ray, and once I get into really a Blu-ray player and everything, that will be a good time to finally rewatch some of these on a better quality, especially when I get a better TV. And finally, the very last one, yes, I am not missing any, is The Young Messiah. I have not watched this, but I believe I saw this at Dollar Tree a while back. Picked it up since it was only $1. It's a perspective on Jesus' life when he was a child, how his parents and how his brothers and his brothers and sisters would interact with him and everything. I don't know how, because there's not necessarily a whole lot of evidence of what it shows from the Bible, exactly what it is, but it does sound like an interesting thing of, I'm sure it's pretty genuine to what they have heart to what they're doing with this film. I don't think it's any sort of hypocritical sort of nonsense making into it, but that will be an interesting watch whenever I get around to that one as well. And here are all the DVDs all over the floor. Some Blu-rays over here, And then the table I was sort of using for my set, a little behind the scenes. And all of the bare shelves that are now there. And I've already been pre-recording some videos ready for college. You already seen some of them, of course, but might end up packing them from here. But there's all the Blu-rays as well as all of the mess that has been coming out as they fell on the floor and just as I covered all of these movies. And I really do appreciate you staying around to watch it all if you are here. So if you still watching and have watched all the way to end, thank you so much for watching me for who knows how long this video ends up being, maybe an hour even. But I had a good fun talking about these movies. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. How many Blu-rays you might have. Like I said, this was over about 90 DVDs and 30 Blu-rays just as of starting collecting sort of last year, a little bit before then, but primarily within this last year of time, and I've gone crazy. Do hashtag apples down in comments below if you stayed along this long, watch through the entire bit. I really do appreciate you staying through all this nonsense, me stumbling over my words and losing my mind as I talk about these movies so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to comment down below all your thoughts, and I'll be back for more movie reviews, rankings, and more.